All right, we are on to air. Today is Thursday, September 16th, at least in North America. This is our weekly developer check-in meeting. And before we get into the agenda items, we should go around and do a quick set of introductions. I'm happy to go first. My name is Jen Lampton. I'm joining from Oakland, California, and I'm so thrilled with all of the collaboration that happened from the larger Backdrop community in the last 2 weeks before this latest release. I'm also super excited about what's coming in the future, particularly around recipes, and I look forward to working on that some more. Let's see, Robert, you want to go next?
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, coming to you from Altadena, California. And I will pass it to Justin.
I'm Justin Christopherson. I'm in Denver, Colorado, and I help out with infrastructure and whatever else I can do. I'll pass it to who goes next? Luke?
I'll go. I am Luke McCormick. I show up as Cell Ear sometimes on the internet. I am in San Ramon, California, where it's a gorgeous 74 degrees. We're a suburb of San Francisco. I have all sorts of things I promised to do in terms of getting release notes made better, and I'm hoping to surf the wave of optimism and good vibes that I feel pouring out of Backdrop right now. Let me toss it over to Joseph.
I am Joseph. I'm a backend developer in Las Vegas, Nevada. Yeah, that's all I have. Greg?
Hi, I'm Greg. I'm joining from Greece. I'm super excited about the new release as well. There's so many goodies that went in and so much collaboration with the people of the community. I'm like, it's been great to be a part of over the past month or so.
Has it been everybody but me?
Yep, sorry, I forgot about you.
Sure. My name's Tim Erickson. I am St. Paul Tim, and I'm in Deerwood, Minnesota, and yep, been very much consumed with the release. One of the releases I've been more involved in than most, so I enjoyed that. So Nate is not here for our meeting today. So, and a couple of people here I know are busy working on other things during the meeting. So this meeting might be a little less focused than usual. But Jen, did you want to do some other stuff?
Just one quick announcement. Also, Tim, you might want to change your name. I don't know.
Good idea.
But I did want to mention that we had 3 new contributed projects that came out this week, 2 of which are recipes, which makes me very excited. There's FAQ recipe and a testimonial recipe. And there's also a new module called Webform Add More. So thank everybody for continuing to work on Backdrop Contrib too. That's all I have, Tim. I don't know if we should.
Okay. Well, let's just kind of wing it. I don't know if you want to try. I'm not prepared to sort of go into the regular schedule. Well, I could. Let's just open it up and see so in our normal agenda, we talk about contributor projects. We just did that. On a high level, I'll just say we had a release, for those who aren't aware, yesterday. We released the 1.19.4, our final bug fix release of the 1.19 release, and the 1.20 release. If anybody's not aware, that always happens. There's always one final release with bug fixes to the previous version before we do a new minor version with new features. But basically, those things all come out on the same day. So as Greg was pointing out in our previous meeting or in between, you can't just look at the release notes for the 1.20 version to understand all the work that happened in the last 2 weeks, because a lot of changes happened in the 1.19 version that will also be inherited by 1.20. I think we should spend a little bit of time a couple of, let me do this, a couple of things. In our outreach meeting today, for those who didn't watch or weren't able to attend, we talked a little bit about CiviCRM and our future use of that for the backdrop community. We're planning to integrate CiviCRM with backdropcms.org. If you're interested in that topic, please watch the previous meeting, the outreach meeting for today, and or there is, if you check in Zulip, there's links to a GitHub topic where we're talking about these improvements. And please let us know if you're interested and you want. There are separate meetings that are happening just on CiviCRM, and if you want to be a part of those, let us know. The other thing is we did talk about promoting in the last 10 or 15 minutes of the last meeting were just sort of talking about what are the things we're excited about in 1.20. And I think maybe we'll rehash that a little bit during this meeting, just because this is the depth that, this seems like a good meeting to do that.
I want to hijack this for a second.
Yes, all right, please. Please.
This might actually tie into the other place and end up being like I want to actually pull a little outreach vibe into this one. I want to go back to when Jen was talking a second ago, saying that there were two new contributed modules this week, right?
2 new contributed recipes this week and a module.
Okay, so I feel that feels like an opportunity to me. It seems like rather than just like slide that in the development meeting, which however many people will watch, that'd be like, let's do a press release about each of those. Let's be like, look at this module, look at this great thing that it does. It solves this problem, was written by this. It comes from, these kinds of things. It comes in 9 colors. I mean, we can, raise a little bit of stuff to kind of keep things moving. So I just want to throw that out there as a thought of let's have a little birth party each time a new module or a thing comes out and do that.
Well,
I know that Tim did an awesome screencast of like showcasing the sort of like what we are able to do with it now. So one version of it. Maybe that can be included. I'm not sure. Did you upload that to the Backdrop YouTube channel, Tim, or is it your?
It's directly uploaded to my channel, but we can sort of add it to a list on backdrop.org or on the Backdrop YouTube channel. I didn't do that yet, though. So yes, I did do a little screencast, just sort of showing off the 2 recipes that I did. Let's talk about that a minute, Luke, because it very much pertains to the topic yesterday and the issue that we raised. We talked about this a bunch last week in the usability meeting, and we talked about it briefly in the outreach meeting today, which is exactly how we're messaging about like recipes right now, because we haven't completely solved that problem, right? We're still not entirely sure what or if we should define what a recipe is. All we did so far is fix a bug that now allows us to sort of more easily use something called a recipe, but we haven't made any policy decisions. We haven't created a new project type yet, and so immediately, some people did raise the question today. For example, one of my recipes is called FAQ, and Olaf pointed out that there's a Drupal project called FAQ, which if that ever reported to Backdrop, the namespace would be taken. And so, if we had a different project type for recipes, maybe there would be less of a likelihood of named, although I'm not even sure that that's true, because we'd still have the same problem. So, so I don't think that's a recipe problem, but it is a good reminder that as we're opening new projects, it's a good, I don't think there's any rule that says we have to do this, but it's certainly a good idea to check and see if there's any Drupal projects that might sort of have a claim to that namespace, just because we'd like to keep that, the portability of Drupal modules and themes as open as possible. So I'm interested in ideas on, like, if we should be, we could adopt some convention for recipes in terms of naming them that just makes it less likely that we use up namespaces, but I'm nervous about that too, because I still don't know exactly how a recipe is different from a module. And so, I think the examples I did today are pretty clear. They're config only files, but if we started adding a little bit of PHP to a config recipe, is it a recipe or is it a module? I don't know. There's just not a clear line between what a recipe and a module is. So I don't know how we.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any thoughts on it? I mean, any of those? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say a lot of this we just have to figure out as we go through it. Right now, there is no difference between a recipe and a module. A recipe is functionally a module, works just like a module. I think for your specific problem, it might be good to change the name of the project just so it doesn't conflict with the Drupal project. But it's up to you what you want to call it. Like you could call it frequently asked questions and make it have like a really long name, or you could call it FAQ recipe or whatever you want. I think that's fine. I don't have any thoughts on whether we should adopt a naming convention. In general, I feel like if we do, probably only half the people would use it anyway. So I don't think it would necessarily be a solution, but we could mark it as like a best practice. So that's good. Go ahead, Greg, you have a better thought.
If the recipe is meant to replace what previously was a module in Drupal, so if the recipe provides the same features as the FAQ module, in this case in Drupal, then I think that there's no problem with the namespace collision. You just need to explain to people that you don't need that module anymore. It's all configuration.
And write an upgrade path.
Yes, basically that. But which the upgrade path would probably would need to migrate content as well. So yeah, anyways, just wanted to throw that out there real quick.
Yeah, that's a good point. There are a lot of things that were done one way in Drupal that don't have to be solved the same way in Backdrop now that we have configuration. I think this is more common for like older projects like Drupal 5 and Drupal 6 modules used to do a lot of stuff that can be accomplished with configuration in Drupal 7 and Backdrop. But yeah, FAQ is one of those modules that's been around for a long time, and I don't know what the module offers beyond the fields or node types or whatever, but.
I think in terms of branding, we would want, like for recipes, while we're building them up, I would think we would want recipe in the name, so that you can search for, okay, what recipes are there? And, all the ones that start with recipe or end with recipe or something.
It is in the module name. It's just the machine name where we have the conflict.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right. So it's the machine name is FAQ, but it says recipe in the human readable name.
And long term, we could create a new project type that core supports called recipe, where instead of it being type equals module, it could be type equals recipe. And that would give us a really easy way to search for like modules, themes, layouts, recipes. But they are still all going to live in the GitHub repository, one group. And that we are still going to have namespace conflicts the same way right now. You can't have like a module and a theme with the same name. It's going to be the same problem going forward. So.
Well, Tim, how would you feel about changing the machine name to include the word recipe in it?
Well, I already have done that. I think my reluctance to including the word recipe in the machine name was just, again, that we don't have an official definition yet of what a recipe is. But I'm not too worried about that, because I think this is about as recipe-ish as you can get, this particular one. So I'm fine with that. But I asked for input a week ago, and the input a week ago was to leave recipe out of the machine name. But
That's my fault.
It was my fault as well, sharing the fault.
But now that we've thought about it some more, that makes sense. So
and change it back next week.
I think the only reason this came up is just because there happens to be a Drupal 7 module with the same name.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Exactly.
It does seem like if it's a recommendation or a best practice to end it in underscore recipe, that should solve similar problems. And if we ultimately decide to do something wildly different, that seems a lot easier to back out of than starting out calling it fact and then figuring out, now what do we do?
Yeah, that's true.
I agree.
Sure. Okay. Well, I don't want to spend all the time on config recipes, but I'll just emphasize that to me that we're in the stage of just trying things out and then solving problems, that we haven't figured out recipes yet. We just one step along the path. We can do more now. Okay. Let's just go ahead.
Can I just add one more thought? I was just thinking, like, there are a lot of Drupal modules that solve common problems that would be really well solved by recipes. I'm just thinking of the ones that are on my list to make. And I'm like, there's probably a landing page module and there's probably a gallery module. Like, all of these things are just really
Forum, blog. I
right.
mean,
Exactly. Yeah. So
all that stuff.
yeah.
Sure.
Okay. We can move on. Sorry.
Okay. Is somebody able to, so it was briefly brought up in the last meeting when we were talking about things we were excited about. I think Joseph mentioned test improvements in testing, which isn't something that necessarily went into core, but it seems appropriate to talk about that because it was a big deal in this last release.
So technically it did go into core because the GitHub Actions are managed by a file in your code base.
Okay.
I can talk a little bit about this, although actually Indigo Zella did most of the work on this, so I don't have all the details.
Look
But
who just showed
essentially,
up.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead.
I took credit for your work. Why don't you take credit for Indoshello's work?
I mean, I don't know. I kind of already said that she did most of the work, but
Go ahead, Joseph. We're sorry interrupted you.
so the big thing is that we are now using GitHub Actions as our test runner platform instead of ZenCI. And so Indigo Zella did a lot of work. Many of the bug fixes in 1.9, 119.4 and 120 are related to that. Yeah, so this allows us to we have more control over our test environments, and we have a better way of seeing like what happened in the process, and it's just generally more consistent.
So does this fix that testing problem that was biting me?
Where like our test boxes would just randomly disappear or tests would just randomly fail. Yeah.
Yeah. They were like fail without there actually being anything wrong. This fixes that?
Theoretically.
So it's that plus also we fixed a couple of previously there were random failures that were happening and there were usual, like we had a meta issue which was listing all those random failures, and actually Nate figured out that an underlying, basically maybe Nate can speak to it, it's the batch system that was flawed and it was causing all these random failures. So he actually provided a fix which fixed most of these random failures, and then Indigo Zella plus others fixed many other that were not caused by that. So basically we have more consistency, it's more stable. Things that were randomly happening before started happening consistently, like the failures were happening consistently with GitHub Actions. So it gave us the opportunity to actually figure out why that was happening and fix them. And another thing that I find really important as well, because one of the open issues that we have is full PHP 8 support, is actually we can specify versions of databases. It could be MariaDB or it could be MySQL and specific versions of it. It could be specific versions of PHP. So on the pull request that someone raises for PHP 8 support, they can specify that, hey, besides the usual PHP 5 and 7 tests, also run PHP 8. So yeah, that's a big advantage.
Yeah, and you can, and because we have full control over the build process for the environment, we could add anything we wanted. Like if we had a test that affects, I don't know, people running Redis on their system, we could say install Redis as part of this test.
Yeah, and even the operating system, we had some people reporting certain bugs. One that comes to mind is thumbnails not being able to be generated on a specific Linux distribution. So if GitHub provides alternative other than Ubuntu, then we can also, in theory, change the operating system.
It sounds like a useful, powerful thing to crow about.
Definitely something worth writing a blog post about.
Yeah, not just besides fixing the bugs that have been haunting us, and that's nice to have, but not necessarily something you want to talk about much. The ability to specify specific tests seems like a big new improvement.
Yeah, and it opens up one of my favorites. It opens up the path for linting, automatic linting. So see how often we say, oh, you missed a space here, or you added an extra space there. So now instead of spending human brain power to pick up those tiny things, now we can automate it, and potentially in the future, I don't know, eventually fix it with like an automated commit on top of what the person has filed. So it's good. It's exciting.
Nate, do you want to say anything about this topic?
Well, you guys covered it pretty extensively, I think. But yeah, I'm very excited about the switch. Just having our tests run consistently, and yeah, Indigozella has really been doing an amazing job fixing those random failures, and she did all of the work to do like the switch, the figuring out the GitHub actions. And just yesterday, we did a follow-up task of upgrading from 1804 Ubuntu 1804 to the latest 2004 Ubuntu. So now we're running the latest version. And somebody already mentioned this in passing that now, in addition to selecting PHP versions, like we're running PHP 5.3 and 7.4 right now, both at the same time. But she also added MySQL versions into the matrix of options up at the very top. So we can also now run, a combination of different MySQL and MariaDB versions as well. So yeah, lots of great new flexibility here. I do think that it would be great to put up a blog post. I think probably myself or Indigozella would be the best people suited for that. But I'm really bad about writing things. So I basically would like to volunteer. But if someone else would like to volunteer instead, I would love that even more. Nobody's forthcoming, so I'll say I'll do it. Just because like exactly describing how we can leverage this has got all kinds of things that we could describe. Actually, maybe a separately documentation page could even be applicable here, because I know GitHub Actions, like it's obviously like widely used amongst other projects, but there's the way that we are using it in particular could be helpful to document, like if filing a pull request in a different PHP version, here's how you do it type thing, because that's not exactly standard.
Yeah, and even as part of a page, just pointing to that other standard documentation so that people can find that. Well,
yeah, we can put that directly in our code base in the YAML file. Yeah, we have a little bit of cleanup to do to like turn off, like remove all the Zen stuff from our code base, because it's still there. I left it there in case we wanted to like turn it back on, like as a safety. But so far, like the last week, 2 weeks that we've been running it, it's just been a huge hit. So very happy with that.
Yeah.
So Nate, I don't know if you're prepared to sort of take over the meeting. We just, prior to you getting here, we just talked a little bit about, we started talking about the last releases, and we talked a little bit about recipes, and then we started talking about this. So that's all we've covered so far.
Cool. Let's see, I'm not really totally prepared. Our 1.21 milestone is empty entirely, which is because we, at the end of things, we didn't actually bump anything this release from 120 to 121, which is amazing. I mean, we did like halfway through or 2/3 of the way through, it was clear that like some of the things had lost some steam, and so we took them out of the milestone because people had delayed working on them or just decided to do something else. And the features that we moved up into that continued to be in 1.20, we completed all of them. And so that makes it so we didn't actually have anything to bump into the next milestone. The only thing that was left was PHP 8 support, full PHP 8 support. And that doesn't really need to go into a minor release. So I moved that one into 1.20.1.
Also,
they
that
could-
issue was a meta and all of its child issues had been addressed. So I think it's like we don't actually have any more work to do on that until we discover something else that needs to be changed.
Yeah, in that one, in that meta, the PHP 8 support, since we do have these new capabilities, I filed a pull request that uses PHP 8 on our test suite. And so you can go and look at the test results on PHP 8 and see what failed individually. And so there is more to do there. And Indigozella also listed them as a comment, but we
Okay.
now kind of have a pull request that is like an ongoing pull request that we'll keep up to date as we fix stuff. And you can always just go and look at it to see what tests are currently failing on PHP 8.
Okay, I'm just gonna copy this list to the parent issue.
Yeah, why don't,
As a
yeah,
starting
just
point.
put and then make it into checkboxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a big help.
Also, we did have one issue that was bumped to the 121 milestone. I think Greg found it in 120 and bumped it. I just removed it because it didn't have an advocate, but I left it on today's agenda. This is the issue about adding a user interface to specify an additional class to rows and regions for flexible layout templates. So if that issue does have an advocate and it just wasn't listed in the issue, feel free to put it back in the milestone, but I couldn't find any information about an advocate, so I removed it. But I want to talk about it today in case we didn't have it documented.
Yeah, it's issue 5044.
Yes, thank you. Should we talk about issues for 121? Like next steps in selecting issues for our next milestone?
Yeah, I think it would be good to go ahead and start thinking about our planning meeting. For those that aren't aware, our planning meetings around like the next feature release usually happen a couple of weeks after the release time. So let's see, that would be like maybe September 7th would be the first meeting after like first meeting next month. And that would be usually when we roughly say, hey, we're going to get together and just like brainstorm ideas and like go through things like the survey results and things like that. We solicit opinions or solicit volunteers for advocates. But as always, we don't really have the power to say this is going to be in the next release. The only thing we can do is solicit volunteers for things that people are excited about and then get them to become an advocate on a corresponding issue. So the process for all releases is always the same, that anything that a developer would like to see in the next release, or actually anyone would like to see in the next release, we need an advocate for that issue. And the process for that is finding the issue or creating the issue, and then putting your handle in the issue summary saying advocate : and then your GitHub handle. And then if there is an issue that has an advocate, then you can mark it milestone candidate minor, and then another person will come in and second that. And you don't need to be a developer to be the advocate, but every feature request for a minor version needs an advocate.
I think it's a
did
good
add
time.
The candidate minor milestone on there so that people know that that was previously supported to be on a milestone.
Yeah, and we have a place where all of this is documented, I think.
Yes, I put a link to it in that issue, but it's also in our agenda right underneath the milestone list.
I think it's a good opportunity now to reopen the poll. I think it worked well the previous time, the one with what people want for the next release. So certain items have been can now be removed from that list because they've been added, and then we can move on to next ones.
So
Yeah,
how
that's a
do
great idea.
we pull in those issues? Because I think we wanted to automate that process a little bit so that we don't have to manually enter all those nodes. Is it all the issues on GitHub that are marked as milestone candidate minor?
Not all of them. I think that the ones that are have recent or many comments, or I think Tim can speak to that.
I can help set up an importer for that, Tim, if you want.
Sure. I think it was actually pretty random. I think I just sort of like took the most commented, feature requests or something, and I did like the top 30 of them, and then like people nominate others so people could manually add them. But some sort of an importer would work. That would be nice if we want to do that again. And I've considered that as well. 3 of the top 10 issues on that either got into or we made big progress on this issue. So our top 10 list is starting to weed down a little bit.
Speaking of which, was telemetry one of them?
It was not on the list, no.
So,
But
so
it's, yeah, it's sort of a beast of its own.
Could we
Yeah,
have,
and- Go ahead, Joseph.
could we make that sort of an ongoing poll feature on the main backdrop website?
I actually requested that, but Tim, I think, has different ideas. He has arguments against it.
I think we were going to put it on the forum site, but it was going to be something we would use indefinitely, just wouldn't always be open. Is that the idea?
I think that's what Classic Press does.
I don't,
Yeah, sorry, go.
yes, I don't
But
think
it's
any
what
final decision has been made, right?
I
Okay.
just want to point out, it's
So,
what they did
no
because they
decision has
lost
been
the
made
free
about-
plan. Sorry.
No problem. No decisions have been made. I have concerns. I feel like the poll is much more effective if there's a voting period than if it's just open all the time. I'm afraid sort of people will ignore it. And I also, there's other logistical problems with that. It doesn't mean I'm not open to like figuring out a way to make it work. But to me, right now, I kind of feel like it's going to have more impact if we open it up for a short period of time once in a while. So,
We can reach
and
out.
in terms of integrating it with the forum or another site, that's all fine. It's just like I was able in an afternoon to spin up a new site, integrating it with back to the forum. I don't know how much work is involved in that. And so I'm not against it, but I don't want to make that a precondition to like doing another forum or another poll because I'm afraid that'll block it.
Regards having it open all the time, the whole idea was, I think, we took it from the Classic Press petitions sort of like system that they have, and we tried to implement something similar. We can reach out to these guys and ask them how, because they do have it open all the time, how's that working for them, and whether what you expressed as a concern, team, is actually a thing. Like if people stop voting it because they had it, open for a prolonged period of time. My main argument for having it open all the time is that when we usually open it for like a week or two or maybe a month, right? So if a new person registers an account on backdropcms.org and eventually they come across this list, they get the feeling of, damn it, I lost my chance to vote. So I don't want them to get that feeling. I would like them to, even if we could, soon as someone creates a new account, say, hey, would you like to take part on, making sort of like influencing the decisions that we make? Please take the time to vote in this list for what feature you would like to see next. It sort of like engages them.
So, I don't know if anyone heard me before when I was trying to say this, but the Classic Press people don't actually use their petition system anymore. They moved everything to a forum because they were dependent on a third-party tool that removed their free plan. So just throwing that out there.
Thanks.
Yeah, kind of like with other tools, I feel like with other websites, I mean, that in the end, it seems like usually we end up using Backdrop for things just because for us, it's what we're the most familiar with and it's the most sustainable for us. Yeah, and Classic Press had been using a host, like you said, a hosted version of a product, which probably would be fine for us. But then, of course, things like this happen, where the thing you're dependent upon stops their service. They do have an open source version, that same project is apparently called Fighter, and you can self-host it. But running a self-hosted like node project for us versus building a backdrop survey website, we'll probably choose the backdrop survey website.
I would like to bring up, and I know that already the disadvantages of it, that we have GitHub and basically each feature is already a GitHub issue, and other projects use reactions on the, yes, thumbs up reactions on the first comment of each issue. The problem with that is that people need to have GitHub accounts, and that's a developer-y thing. So we would like to give people that have only backdropcms.org user accounts and no GitHub accounts the opportunity to vote. That was why we basically created that thing. It was one of the problems that we were trying to tackle. Having said that, we can encourage people, if they like a certain feature, to upvote it on GitHub, and that would help us be able to collate the list of most popular feature requests.
Okay, I got to leave a few minutes early. Jen, you're the host to end the meeting or to end the recording, okay?
Okay.
Let's see. Well, I do want to say that not related, but I do want to say also, like, the thing that we have directly in front of us, like right now, we of course have the bug fix list. So the items that didn't get done in 119.4, they got moved into a new milestone, 1.20.1, and so that will be the next bug fix release of Backdrop, and there's still 70 some issues in that list. We did knock out, I think, 26 or more items in the 119.4 list, which I think was one of our bigger bug releases that we've had. And that was really just great to get so many fixes all together in there. So we already have ways to move forward. And I think one item in particular that it seems really obvious to me, at least, is additional telemetry data that we can start collecting. And Greg, you've opened up an issue for like a big meta of telemetry details, like things that we could start collecting. I see we also had some new suggestions come in, like, detect like offline capabilities and stuff like that. So all kinds of things that we can start collecting now. Although the issue to include telemetry in the installer got hung up. So right now it's really just on it's a very small number of sites that are going to be sending any data, because it's only sites A that have upgraded to 120 and have gone to the modules page and turned on telemetry manually. So
yeah, I would like to point out that we have a label dedicated for metrics in GitHub issues, which is called needs more metrics. So if there is an issue where we're sort of like have resistance because we think that there's people that might be using the feature that we're trying to remove, or people, it might be a setting that we want to change. Like a recent that comes to mind was whether the admin bar was going to be sticky or not, right? So certain things like that, or collecting the installation profile, so, or which core modules are enabled. I think that these are sort of like low-hanging fruits, because there's consensus in those that they're useful from the get-go. But if anyone feels that collecting a specific set of metric will help make a decision on an issue that has been going on for a long time, then they can add this tag, needs metrics.
Yep. And so those are the things I see that are right in front of us. But yeah, I think maybe helping, we didn't actually decide on a timeline before Tim had to drop about getting the survey website back open. I guess we'll kind of need to discuss that through the week and figure out how we can do that. I think it would be good for us to decide if we need that data before we have the planning meeting, or maybe we use the planning meeting to get the survey website, options back in there. I don't know, which way we should go with that. We could always have multiple planning meetings, like that would be fun.
And it can happen on Zulip, like we can have a discussion there. I think that's what happened the previous time. We don't have to have a meeting to flesh out the details. I did want to ask though, eventually getting the telemetry UI and how we allow people to opt in or opt out, and cleaning up the making it part of the installer and cleaning up, decoupling the sending of usage statistics. Does it seem like a feature to you, like something that would need to go in the next minor release, so would have to wait another 4 months, or something that could happen in the next bug fix in a minor release?
I think it depends on what the solution is. Nate and I were talking about this the other day too, and I came up with some ideas I haven't yet put in the issue, but like, I think we should add a block to the telemetry module for the dashboard. That's a new feature, so that would need to probably go in later because it would need testing. But if it's a change to an existing user interface, that could go in at any time. If it's enabling the module by default on new installs, that would need to wait for the next minor release. So it depends on like what it is we're changing to figure out where it would need to go.
Okay.
Yeah, agreed. And I kind of think that we're having some like difficulties regarding like the installer, because we don't want to make the installer longer or more complicated or more scary really in any way. And so not enabling telemetry in the installer in 120, you know, that gives us a longer time to figure out if we can come up with a different solution, a better solution. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah,
also,
I agree with Jen. It depends on what we decide.
There's also like a lot of different problems that I think we're trying to solve. And I think if we can sort of separate them out into like, do we want to combine usage data and telemetry or not? And then how would we handle that technically if you like want to turn off checking for modules or updates or not? And then once we have that figured out, then we're like, okay, how do we build a user interface for that? And then where does it live? There's sort of like 6 questions we need to answer before we can arrive at a solution. And I think because it was so close to 120, we were like, build a solution. And we didn't even think about like what the original questions were. And now we've sort of been through that. And we're like, okay, let's slow down a minute and figure out the questions and figure out how we're gonna, what all the possible solutions are gonna be, and then which one we like the best. It's a more complicated problem than we thought.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. How about I think I had screenshots. So because that telemetry thing was going on for a few years now before it got finalized, each time that I had a nice experience with any other software requesting enabling telemetry, I was grabbing screenshots where they were doing it, you know, in a polite and thankful way. I think, well, I don't want to, because we're being recorded, I don't want to name products, but I'll see if I can collate all that and put it in a relevant issue.
That'd be great.
But I'm not sure if you saw my sort of like mock-up screenshot 10 with the, you know, thank you thingy. So one of your concerns was that we're telling people that we're doing something that is bad and we're scaring them away, or yeah.
Well, we're just talking people into unchecking the box on install. Rather than like, they're not gonna be scared away from Backdrop, but they're definitely not gonna enable telemetry. And that's the opposite of what we want by putting it in the installer.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, I'll have a look. I don't think I've seen that screenshot yet. I had to like in that issue for a little bit. So I'm like, I've got other stuff I can like make progress on, and like I'm tired of saying no to things. So I'm just gonna leave that alone.
It was just that most of the software where I considered to have a nice experience, instead of saying enable this to help us do that, they were basically saying thank you for enabling this, even though it wasn't ticked and it was basically prompting you and you haven't enabled it. It's like, thank you for considering enabling it. You help us build a better product. And that sort of like urges me to, you know, help out, instead of telling people that the checkbox basically does the action of enabling or disabling a module, which does whatever it does, we explain to them how they help us by making that selection, which is more, it's friendlier.
Yeah, and I think that would be great on the installer, and we can have different language in other places, like on the dashboard or on the page that actually reports the stuff. We can be very specific about it. Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, and if we provide links to our privacy policy and a detailed sort of like bullet point list of what gets sent out to sort of like put them at ease that, you know, it's anonymous, it's completely anonymously, and so on and so forth, and what it's being used for, I think that we'll have more chances for people to opt in. But yeah, I'm super excited about telemetry, by the way, if it's not apparent.
Are we going to display on there like the actual data that is being sent back?
Yeah, I think that's already
That-
there.
Yeah,
already
that's
did.
already there. There's a reports page that tells
Okay.
you what data is being sent. Yeah. Yeah, well, lots of things. I wonder that the issue that we're talking about is 3168, and it has a ambiguous title. The title is "Separate Checking for Updates from Collecting Anonymous Data." I think it would be good if we separated this out and like made an issue for turn on telemetry module or something like that, you know,
Yeah.
UI for turning on telemetry module, because this issue kind of has gone off the rails a little bit because it's meshing into too many areas all at once.
Yeah. Do we already have a meta follow-ups for telemetry? Is that the one you made, Greg?
So I haven't looked at the meta in a while. I know that I raised children issues to that for which metrics we need to gather or what I thought were useful.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if I have a specific one for that, for whether we enable it, how we enable it, and so on.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it would be good to also, Greg, 285 issue 285 is the telemetry meta. But we kind of I foolishly used that as the main implementation issue. I think we should retitle that one as like telemetry
Main
initial
implementation.
implementation, and then
Initiative
make a new meta and then copy and paste the new meta list, the
Okay.
list from the old one into that one. And that way we can keep 285 closed as a finished feature in the milestone. And yeah, then it's less confusing. Plus,
Good,
we don't have to read over 200 comments to get to the current state of things.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can do that and make that new issue,
Thanks.
since I know Greg's in the middle of a release or something. Otherwise, you'd be better at this.
So I have a question about actually this. Is the plan to make it so that reporting which modules you use and checking for updates for your modules is separate processes? Was that?
Unfortunately, they already are separate processes. So we're trying to figure out how or if we want to combine the user interface for those two things into one interface. Or, yeah, we've got a little cleanup on that.
Yeah. So
My question was,
sorry,
my question was, if I have the updater module turned off, will it still report my modules?
No.
It reports. Yeah, Nate, you go ahead.
Yeah. So, okay. So that's what this issue is. 3168 is, can you have update module turned on and check for updates without being reported? That's the option that is in discussion here.
This is the opposite, though.
I'd like the opposite.
Can you
I'd
have
like-
the update
so
module turned off and still report your usage data?
We have about 60 sites currently running in a multi-site. And I don't want the sites to individually be checking for updates and sending me 60 messages about updates, but I would like it to say there are 60 sites using these modules.
Oh, interesting.
So currently my dad and I have the update module turned off for all of our sites because we don't want those emails coming in.
You can turn off the
Interesting.
email.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can
and
turn off the emails.
Okay, well, we also don't want it telling our users that there are updates.
Yes, exactly. So that's a similar thing with GovCMS. GovCMS, because the Department of Finance in Australia manages the updates for the entire platform for SaaS customers, and because they don't want to have 400 sites at the same time checking for updates, even like you can still have limited permissions so that the users don't see the notifications about security updates, but they don't even want the platform doing traffic, like getting implications either in performance or in cost because they are, causing traffic outgoing. So there are valid reasons for disabling the update module when you know that you have a centralized place where you monitor your updates yourself. Yes.
If you don't want traffic though, you don't want to report the data either, right?
Well,
if you're nice,
maybe, except
Like a longer interval or something. Yeah, we've got some.
except I do want it to report to telemetry, and I do want it to report which modules I use so that our statistics go up.
Exactly.
But maybe like if you check for updates every hour, every day or something, your usage report could be like every month, and that would help with traffic. I don't know. For 400 sites, maybe it's still.
It could be to reach your solution, Joseph. We could do a combination of issues that we're already discussing. One issue we already have open for update module is to remove the big blaring notifications across the top and just refer people to the status report because we already have the red dot. So if we did that, remove the notification system, and then second of all, we also have an issue for dismissible status report messages. You could silence the update message to silence the red dot. And those two things combined might be able to get a solution that you want to be able to report but not bother users. I don't know if that's just a offhand thing, but in any case, it is complicated that we have two things that report data. Update module reports module or project usage, and then telemetry module reports the way that modules that are enabled are configured. We may end up using telemetry module to record which core modules are enabled, because all update checking does is it's per project, not per module. And so it can tell you what projects are in use, not which modules within those projects. So core is one project, and so you can't tell what individual modules are turned on, but you can with telemetry.
And it's for contrib as well. That this may be useful. For example, there's the norm or the most usual thing is that a module is a single thing, but there's modules that have submodules, and then people wonder like, hey, is anyone using this submodule? I want to deprecate it. They will never get information because the update module reports the main project, not the submodules.
Right, meta tag is a good example for that one.
Yes. And web form and devel and plenty other.
Well, we are all out of time today, so I'll say it again since I missed the beginning of the meeting. Thank you so much for all of the hard work on 1.20. 1.20 is an awesome release, tons of new stuff in there, lots of backend things, lots of user interface facing things. It's a great release. Also, our collaboration and the number of contributors that we had. I didn't do a total count, which I should go back and check, but I'm feeling pretty sure that this was probably one of the highest contributor counts that we've had in any release of Backdrop ever. So it was a really great release, lots of activity and lots of new community members all stepping forward, lots of new roles that are being filled and lots of new ways that we're working together. So it's great and exciting time in the world of Backdrop, and thank you so much everyone for your work on 1.20. Okay, well, thank you all. We'll catch you guys all next week. Folks, next week. Bye.